Distinguished participants, our partners of the Chandler Institute of Governance, our distinguished other partners, ladies and gentlemen, I wish all of you good morning because it is morning here in Nairobi. On behalf of the AAPAM Executive Committee and the entire AAPAM fraternity, I warmly welcome you to this online session of the Strong Nations for Africa Program 2025. Again, let me congratulate you for the successful session of the first physical segment held in Tanzania just a week ago. As you are already aware, today's online session is the second segment of the entire Strong Nations for Africa program. Ladies and gentlemen, our theme for today is future-ready governance, forecasting as a public sector strategy for sustainable development. Obviously, this theme is very timely and important. As governments continue to navigate increasingly complex and uncertain environments, being future-ready and able to forecast is no longer an option. It is key and essential. Forecasting enables the public sector to anticipate trends, prepare for disruptions, and craft policies that are proactive rather than reactive. Distinguished participants, by embedding foresight and scenario planning into governance, we strengthen our collective capacity to deliver sustainable development outcomes. This ensures that today's decisions remain relevant for tomorrow, while our institutions remain agile, resilient, and responsive to the needs of citizens. Ultimately, therefore, forecasting is not about predicting the future with certainty, but about equipping the public sector with the right tools to manage uncertainties, seize emerging opportunities, and build a good future for generations to come. Distinguished participants, again, let me warmly welcome all of you to this online session and wish you a very successful and enjoyable participation. With those remarks, allow me to introduce our presenter for today. Our presenter for today is Ms. Sarah Tawfik Hamuda. Ms. Hamuda is a senior continental governance officer at the African Peer Review Mechanism, and she's the one who will take us deeper into today's important theme. Ms. Sarah, you have the floor, and I thank all of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Scott. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
I can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Excellencies. Good morning, everyone. From Johannesburg, I'm responsible for supporting the continental program of Agenda 2063 and SDGs. I can see some of the common faces to AAPRM, since we also support member states at national and continental level. Without any overdue, allow me to start my presentation, but also allow me to switch off my camera in case just the connection is a bit faint. Before I proceed with the strategic planning and foresight, I'm aware that last week we have already had a very comprehensive lecture on foresight and strategic planning. From our perspective, allow me first to start to tell you more about AAPRM, what we do, and how our work on strategic planning came through, especially with the consideration of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. So the AAPRM Continental Secretariat and the AAPRM in general is one of the African Union-led organizations, a mutually agreed instrument and a voluntary acceded mechanism which aims to promote good governance in the continent. It was established within the process of the reforms of the African Union in 2002, with the also establishment of AAPAM, and then it becomes an independent body. We work basically on governance reviews and conducting governance assessment reviews through peer learning between member states. I think by today we have conducted more than 30 reviews, and one of our forerunner countries on the reviews actually is Ghana, and also we have South Africa and many other African member states. Since 2017, we have been given a mandate to support member states as an additional mandate on the SDGs and Agenda 2063 monitoring and evaluation. And in the sense of complementarity, in collaboration with the African Commission and AAPAM, APRM has been heavily focusing on assessing aspiration 3, good governance in Africa, respect to rule of law and democracy. But also this mandate has been occupying APRM with other duties, including ensuring that key governance areas are tracked at national level, and that APRM also is positioned as an early warning tool for conflict prevention. And this is also an element to how national development planning is interlinked with conflict prevention in the continent. With the adoption of the second 10-year implementation plan in 2024, we are having 7 moonshots, as you know, of Agenda 2063, which start from 2023 up to 2033. And again, we have 7 moonshots which aim to improve and strengthen the economic, political, and social integration of our continent. And again, within the COVID-19 crisis, APRM has initiated various consultations with member states and even reports on the governance COVID-19 response. And what we found that most of our member states were not prepared adequately to address the pandemic. And that's how forecasting and foresight, strategic planning, and how we should anticipate crises become a matter of reality and a matter of urgency to be tackled. We also identified catalytic interventions to pursue Agenda 2063 in its second decade of implementation. And what we found that when it comes to, again, resilience and building strong institutions, issues of effective institutions, issues of transformative leadership, responsive institutions are extremely needed, and also issues related to education, infrastructure, etc., etc. So all these interventions require proper strategic planning and foresight in order to guide decision makers and also the orientation of our development policies. As APRM, and especially our directorate, the Agenda 2063 program, we have a catalytic intervention at continental level. And one of these interventions is the support we provide to help member states on the SDGs reporting, the voluntary national reviews, and Agenda 2063 progress report. We also have a concrete program with the UNDESA, the UN Economic and Social Affairs, to strengthen public institutions. And this program is led by the Committee of Experts of Public Administration at the United Nations, where we have very strong African calibers who propose that APRM should play this role in linking African countries with the available tools and toolkits, which aims to strengthen public institutions' responsiveness. And we, as APRM, conducted 5 continental workshops over the past 5 years in Cape Town to strengthen the capacities of 400 civil servants across the continent. And we were very glad to conduct this program in collaboration with APAM and with the leadership of Dr. Scott. And one of the issues which has been raised over and over was the issue of strategic planning and foresight. And with the support of different experts from the continent, we developed a toolkit on strategic planning and foresight, which we will be discussing with you today, and we look forward to your insights. But also, before I proceed with that, allow me to highlight that also within this program, we have a special focus on 4 aspirations of Agenda 2063. Aspiration 3, Africa with good governance, democracy, and rule of law. Aspiration 4, peaceful Africa. Aspiration 6, which aims to empower women and youth. Aspiration 7, which also aims to position Africa as an influential and global player. And of course, public institutions in the continent is very important in this regard. Now, moving to our background over the context about this toolkit. We developed this toolkit in collaboration, as I mentioned, with AAPAM and other players, including representatives from the National Planning Commissions of Uganda, Ghana, South Africa, and Egypt, to see how we can accelerate the principles for effective governance of SDGs. And the aim was to address the gaps pertinent to sound policy making principle, which has been emphasized as one of the principles for effective governance of SDGs. And as I mentioned, the toolkit was also developed as a response to the lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic, how it exposed the planning vulnerabilities, threatening the progress towards SDGs, and therefore some countries ended up reprioritizing the goals that should be implemented by each country. So the toolkit that we developed is a very simple and friendly user toolkit, which provides self-assessment framework to assess or examine how strategic planning is integrated into national policies. It's a very simple step-by-step guidance to outline essential actions to establish robust national strategic planning systems. It also identified clear responsibilities, who's responsible for what, especially the role of the ministries of planning and the National Planning Commissions to have recommended action to ensure coherence and ownership of the reforms and even the alignment with Agenda 2063. And last but not least, it also aims to provide a futuristic, ready governance approach to how countries can anticipate future scenarios and allocate resources proactively. And I would say our toolkit is more policy-oriented toolkit, which generates very, very useful data, as I will share with you soon or shortly. And it would be very, very useful if we can also see after this session how certain countries can benefit from this toolkit at national level to strengthen the capacities of your civil servants. So the core components of our toolkit, we are highlighting, first of all, the institutional elements of strategic planning. So we are asking questions about the regular reviews, the issues of inclusive planning formulation, how participatory approach is taking place while drafting and complementing the National Development Plan, how the National Development Plan is also grounded on legal framework and constitutional elements, and also the extent of independence and empowerment of your national planning agency and how far its legal authority looks alike. There are also policy elements in this toolkit. So we started with the institutional element and then we move to the policy element, where we ask them how far are they integrating data into national development planning? How far is the alignment across sectors to promote policy coherence? How far the National Development Plan has scenario planning, which is very important also to anticipate the trajectories of future. And lastly but not least, where is the risk anticipation or risk adaptation also strategies for national development planning, and also to ensure that early warning system is embedded into NDP in order to mitigate future responsibilities or future shocks. We move also to the third element of our toolkit, which looks deeply on the implementation framework. So we ask our member states diagnostic questions on the key actors involved in national planning, the verification methods, who's doing what, which kind of policy are they contributing to, and also we try to engage all the different authorities to respond and also to see how adoption is taking place. Lastly but not least, also we have an emphasis on the communication and legal framework of the national planning and foresight strategies. So we try to understand and underline the formal coordination mechanisms exist to ensure that foresight planning is taking place. What are the clear communication channels among the government authorities? Do you have the adequate multi-stakeholder forums in order to discuss the issue of national development planning, and also the identification of rules? And lastly but not least, as I mentioned before, dear colleagues and excellencies, is the constitutional and legislative elements of national foresight and how this relates to strategic planning. We also underline from the inputs we received from a lot of countries the constitutional mandate of planning, the specific laws and regulations, and how these regulations are taken into affirmative actions, not just standing being a law. And of course, the sustainability beyond political, how are you also engaging citizens, and how are you able to, as countries and national planning commissions, are you having multi-stakeholder approach to include your communities and the grassroots in the national planning decision making? So it's a very simple toolkit, and it also complements the efforts we do on Agenda 2063, and it also aims to encourage all member states to utilize this toolkit to help them to anticipate the future. I'm not sure if I should proceed with the findings now.
Hello, Sarah, we can't hear you.
I can what?
Oh, we can hear you now. You had lost your bit.
Shall I continue or
Hello, Sarah.
No,
Hello?
I think the connection is poor. We can't. I can't hear her as well.
Okay. Hello, Sarah, can you hear us?
No, we completely lost her.
Okay, let me just
Can-
sorry about that.
Sorry, Cliff, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I don't know what happened. It took me out. No, I was just proposing that I'm trying to turn on my video, but I don't know why I'm unable to. I was just wondering if any colleague would like to say something on this first part of the presentation before we proceed with the findings. So I wonder if we should do that just to give our session more interactive engagement. Shall
Any
we choose
comments?
someone? Yes, any comments, any reflections so far?
Chairperson,
Yes, please.
Please introduce
a very
yourself.
good morning to the colleagues and everyone on platform and to the chairperson of the meeting or the facilitator. My name is Professor Halima Kunyute. I think we really appreciate the inputs that have been dispatched thus far. And I am aware that perhaps I'm speaking from a perspective of advantage because I am a member of the African Peer Review Mechanism Subcommittee on Governance and Administration. And I'm aware of the toolkits that have been since put in place to allow for comprehensive components around us having to peer review different countries and have been involved in some of the interactions in the benchmarking on elements of governance and administration. And I think also as South Africa, this is one of the perspectives we put in place, or rather drew from when we put in place the professionalization framework, understanding that as a country, we needed to have this key element drawing from the research that was done by the African peer review mechanisms and some of their tools, the elements of the tools being incorporated in the work that we do within advancing governance and higher level administrative structures. Perhaps let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Halima. I wish I could have seen your face, but the sound. I mean, of course your name looks familiar as well, but I wish there is a chance to see you. No, thank you very much for this input from South Africa. I'm not sure if we have any other colleague or any country which also would like to share some experiences on the national foresight.
Yes,
Because
there's
we're
a
very
hand by Lesenia.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I also wish to commend the APRM and of course its recent launch of the strategic plan. From Lesotho here, it has been a very instrumental organization. I mean, recently we did the 2022 governance report on unconstitutional changes of governance, and I was part of the expert team that did that, and I know from the insights that APRM's job is quite robust. And if we go through its ethos and its principles, I know that the continent is in good hands. I mean, the fact that the world has the global village has so many challenges that the APRM, through its Pan-African perspective, wishes to maybe navigate the relevance of Africa in general, and through the peer review strategies that says that as African countries looking at the strategies that they want to implement from the community level up to the national level, and through the communities the committees that say that we can check ourselves and then see where we have made our mistakes and then how we can navigate and move forward. I think it's a good initiative, and truly commend APRM and its efforts. Thank you.
Time. Allow me to continue with the presentation for now, and I'm sure that after sharing the findings, I'm sure that we'll get more and more insights. Can you see the slides at the moment, please? If somebody can voluntarily let me know. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see them.
Perfect.
Yes, we can see them.
So,
Thank you.
thank you very much. So I was just saying that this is actually a new policy brief we developed, and we launched it during the high-level political forum in New York. At the it's a big, I would say, a gathering where member states from the whole world, not just from Africa, are presenting their progress on the SDGs and Agenda 2063. And I'm glad to report that we launched our report, our policy brief, after compiling data from 12 African countries. These countries participated in one of our continental workshops last year with UNDESA in Cape Town, and we offered the toolkit, which we have been working on for 2 years, for validation and data collection. This is the policy brief cover, and also the QR code can take you through it faster through this screen now. And it's been actually a collective action, collective work of 2 colleagues and myself. One of them also is two from Uganda, and myself. We developed this based on the findings we have. But the toolkit itself was developed, as I said, thanks to a working group from different African countries, and mostly national experts at the National Planning Commissions of Ghana, South Africa, I think Namibia, and also Uganda. And the author of the toolkit itself is Professor Muhammad Al-Karamani, a professor of public policy at the American University in Cairo. So it was a collective action between different brothers and sisters in the continent. And I'm glad to report that at least in the first validation, we got at least 12 countries responding to this toolkit. And we actually got like a quite balance between male and female, but of course the male experts who responded was a bit higher than the females. Most of our member states, which are namely Zimbabwe, Zambia, Uganda, South Africa, Namibia, Malawi, Kenya, Ghana, Comoros, Cameroon, Botswana, and Benin, they have confirmed that their countries have sufficient laws and regulations to organize how the National Development Plan is formulated. Having said that, when we asked them how far you see these regulations are harmonized to ensure proper domestication of national development plans, I think the experience was very different, especially from West Africa perspective. Benin, Cameroon, Ghana, they don't really see that their countries are harmonizing adequately the laws and regulations to ensure that they achieve the National Development Plan, meaning that the law can be passed by the parliament or adopted, but not necessarily reflecting on the consolidation of the National Development Plan, especially when it comes to the human rights approach, leaving no one behind approach, the multi-stakeholder engagement, the finance for the SDGs and Agenda 2063. In the case of Zambia, I would say this is one of the good cases we got, or the best practice we had in this exercise, because Zambia's 8th National Development Plan has been heavily considered as a socio-economic transformative plan, especially with the new leadership and the president. The strategic intervention here is focusing on 4 thematic areas, including economic transformation and job creation, which is the main focus to achieve a stable macroeconomic situation. There is also delivering sustainable development to enhance livelihood for every Zambian, and to, as I said, to focus on industrial and productive economies and the sectors, including mining, agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing. There are also areas of support where the National Development Plan heavily highlighted for this economic transformation agenda, heavily focusing on human and social development, provision of basic services for citizens, creating of effectively equip the human capital reserve to support this economic transformation, and also ensure environmental sustainability to adjust the climate change and to mainstream green interventions, or what is called climate change adoption. This is the response we got from Zambia, and we have seen that the country, because Zambia also was exposed to AAPAM recently, 2nd generation review, that these good practices have been captured, and we are trying to now highlight all the good practice in our National Planning Community of Practice. Now, when it comes to legal frameworks, only 82 of the respondents, and by the way, this was a very strict snow poll sample. We didn't offer the toolkit to everybody to answer, but rather experts, more than, I think, 20 experts from these 12 countries. But once we disseminated at national level or continental level, I think the picture will be very different. But at least this sample argued that their constitutions are aligned with the development planning systems, and they are grounded on constitutional baseline, especially Ghana, which has, and South Africa as well, which have very solid constitutional elements on national development planning, and how the national planning authorities have a strong role to play, especially in the case of Uganda. In some countries specifically, specific planning laws complement the constitution, and we have this seen in Namibia and Botswana. And when we asked member states on the existence of national planning architecture, as I said, 82% of them agreed that they have adequate national planning architecture. Having said that, also out of the 12 countries, nine countries only, they have the National Planning Agency or equivalent structure coordinating the development plans. Countries like Uganda, Botswana, South Africa host dedicated commissions for planning, while countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Kenya, they embedded planning duties within the ministries of finance or economic planning. Cameroon also exclusively has a department within the Ministry of Economic Planning and Treasury. Also, Comoros and Benin, they acknowledge that they lack formal agencies to rely on or an ad hoc committee to have this fragmentation issue of national planning. Benin has a directorate for policy coordination, and this also underscores diverse institutional models for coordination of national planning in the continent, with also implications for coherence and clear mandate. When we asked them also about the independence, how far you see your national planning authorities independence was seen as extremely rare. Only 2 out of the 12 countries, agencies operating autonomously. Malawi also provide us with a very good example. I will leave it for you because of the sake of time, but Malawi provide us with to see how, starting from the presidential delivery unit up till the National Planning Commission, and the parliament, how all the actors are working together to ensure adequate planning. But of course, the country size, I would say the country financial and human resources and capabilities play very, very important role. We cannot compare a country like Seychelles or Malawi with big countries in the continent like South Africa or Ghana, where the demand and the population pressure is higher, and also the demand on managing a huge public sector is concerned. But at least for Malawi, for Uganda, for South Africa, we have some good examples of how the national planning is structured, starting from presidential and political support, coordination committees, and also sector working groups. When we asked, as I was saying earlier, about the independence, most of our experts said yes. When we asked about the political power, they said yes. But then the majority, when we asked about the independence, almost more than 70% or 67% said no or partially. And the reason for that, because it was highlighted that the political will of the government comes over the independence of the National Planning Agency. Then when we also asked about the strategic preparedness and foresight planning, if the country has, or if the National Planning Authority or the ministry has national strategic foresight unit, the majority also said no. Only 47% of respondents said yes. And these are mainly the countries that also adopting the early warning systems, which are Botswana, Benin, Kenya, Namibia, South Africa, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The other countries, and mostly our West African countries, also said that they partially or they don't have at all. On the integration of foresight planning into national development plans, when we asked member states how well you see that the strategic planning foresight is integrated in the national development plan, only 54% of our sample said that it's adequately integrated, while the rest, only 20% said it's strongly integrated, and more than almost 26% said it's poorly integrated. So for Botswana, for instance, and this is a comment we received from one of the respondents, that they are seeing foresight as a new concept, and that the method is currently used is the macro fiscal projection, but they need more capacity building on that. Uganda, on the other side, emphasized that strategic planning and foresight is well articulated and prioritized in the development planning process. However, there are also challenges have been identified by most of our member states responding to this toolkit, including communication, coordination, working in silos, and sidelining of some departments, the necessity for having modeling unit, and the commitment and availability of resources to develop this early warning system and foresight planning. Out of all the interventions we got, and also the qualitative analysis of our findings, we have almost 8 key findings of this exercise. That first of all, national development plans are in place in Africa, but they vary very much in the horizons and strategic priorities. On strategic foresight, it's gaining ground in the continent, but unevenly implemented or institutionalized across national planning systems. That strategic foresight gains ground, but integration remains uneven across African countries. There is multi-level alignment. There is universal rhetoric on what strategic planning means, but there is a shallow integration of policies. So for instance, a policy related to environment may not be necessarily reflecting the industrialization policy in the same country, which create a lot of trade-off. There is universal evidence-based planning, but constrained by data gaps. Policy coherence remains quite issue. There are some issues of thematic success, some stories of success, but there are also integration gaps. On the early warning system, it's put in place as highlighted, but very fragmented, and undermines proactive crisis management after COVID. And lastly, but not least, there are also superficial frameworks masked to cover implementation deficits. So we left the toolkit here for your, curiosity. If you would like to have a look, you can just use this QR code where it will take you straight to the toolkit. I'll be very, very happy to, as I said to you, to discuss bilaterally or even through AAPAM how we can take this exercise further in some specific African countries. Lastly, but not least, of course, the recommendations coming out of this policy brief and this exercise are so many, but our focus here is on 5 thematic areas: on the data and evidence systems, how we should improve data, like this kind of work to project where our national planning and foresight capacity in the continent looks alike, how we should strengthen capacity and technical skills of our civil servants, on scenario modeling, on risk analysis, and also the countries like Cameroon and Botswana emphasized the urgent need for such capacity building, how we align our institutional and legal reforms with the Agenda 2063 priorities and foresight needs, the coordination and implementation mechanisms as well. And lastly, but not least, and I think this even comes most importantly, how to embrace the culture of anticipatory governance and adaptive governance to shocks and disasters. So allow me to stop here and thank you very much for listening. Merci and shukran jazilan.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We sincerely appreciate. Before I make any other further comments, I'll kindly request Kevin to project the polls, after which we can have further discussion. Kindly, Kevin, you can share the polls so that our lovely participants can respond to them, and then we project them much later on. Thank you.
Cliff, would you like to allow them to say a few words before that?
Yes. I just wanted Kevin to project, and then after that, the participants can respond, so that we do not forget about the polls. We'll get the results much later. Okay, so those are the poll questions. You can just kindly respond to them, and then we'll see the results after we are done with the session. We'll be sharing the presentation actually with all of you, and the QR code is going to be there. But you have noted your comment, Mr. Sadiq. We'll be sharing the presentation. I think we are all done now.
No, yet, sir.
Pardon?
No, yet, not yet.
Okay. Thank you. Just take your time.
Okay, Cliff,
Can I
where are we now?
confirm? Yes, we can hear you. Can I confirm whether we have all finished the polls, please? Anyone who's still undertaking the polls? I believe we are finalized on that aspect of the interactive session. Okay, Kevin, can you kindly repeat the polls here? Can you reshare them again kindly, Kevin? Because I think there's someone who did not manage to respond to them. Okay, so those are the questions. And I see from, unfortunately, we cannot reshare them again because these are the results. Kevin, we can project the results much later since they have already been responded to. But what we'll do, we can still share the polls on WhatsApp so that you just have a look at them individually and analyze them much later. We want now to take this opportunity to open the session for further discussions. I think our presenter, Madam Sarah, we really want to thank you so much for that very interactive session. One key aspect that I've noted is that data plus foresight is equals to better policy, and evidence-based forecasting enables long-term, inclusive, and sustainable decisions. I've also noted the aspect of ensuring that you have adequate capacity and essential skills and tools, which will empower various stakeholders to come together to make forecasting very practical and impactful in the continent and in our various countries. Lastly, you noted that the aspect of ensuring that leadership is brought on board. If you have leadership that matters, political will and institutional commitment are very critical for integrating foresighting into governance systems. Without the support of any country or political will, then I think forecasting cannot be fully achieved. And we thank you so much for that very interactive session. I now will take this opportunity to welcome you all for any interactive, for any discussions or comments that you may like to post to our presenter as we continue this session. Thank you.
Yeah, you can just raise your hand and then introduce yourself. Maybe give us some thoughts from what you see as the findings. How do you see this also in your country? I'm curious if we have some of the countries we mentioned, like Uganda, Zambia, or others. I can see Charlie M. Charlie, you can, yeah, Charlie M.
Thank you very much. And good morning to the chairperson and everyone on the platform. And thank you, Sarah, once more for this information in order to assist us to have a better understanding in terms of the implementation, to have an intention in terms of the good governance and ethical conduct that is required to make things better in the continent. What I trying to find out based on the findings and the reviews that have been done, because I believe the institution objective is to ensure that things are done better. There should be a change in terms of how African government or leadership are conducting itself in terms of the business. So what I'm trying to find out now in terms of the review, what have been so far the benefit in terms of governance and ethical conduct to the African government based on the findings that have been done. Is there any impact or change that is trying to drive at the point where we need to get things done in the correct manner? I will pause here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? I see on the chat box we have someone, Ms. Napasia Leposa asking, I do not see Lesotho listed. Does it mean it did not participate or it's not a member of the session, of the toolkit rather?
Sorry if I missed this part. There was a question on the chat, you say, concerning what?
Someone is
Cliff?
asking from Lesotho. Lesotho is not listed. Does it mean it did not participate or it's not a member?
Oh, no. I think Lesotho attended this workshop. I remember very carefully, but some of our participating member states haven't responded. Actually, the workshop targeted 20 countries. And as I said, because it was the first time to disseminate it and validate the data, we just thought that we will focus on the participants, and then we can open it later based on country requests or national support request from our member states and national structures. So I'm very happy with the comment from my brother from Lesotho, and very much looking forward that we can support Lesotho with this work if required and if needed. And I will leave my email in the chat. If you, we can just start a bilateral conversation on this and see how we can support you through the APRM national structure there. Thank you, Cliff. I wonder if do we have any colleague from Zambia also, or Uganda?
There was a question from Charlie, I think. I think you have to respond to it. Charlie asked something. I think there is a comment that he made before I read the chat.
I probably haven't heard him properly. Charlie, can you repeat the question?
Thank you, Sarah. Maybe in short, the impact in terms of the review or the finding in line with the objective, because I believe the objective of the organization is to try to assist African government to do things better in a different way. What are those impacts that have been done so far in assisting African government? Thank you.
And you're from which country, Charlie, if I can ask?
I'm from South Africa.
Of course. Yeah, I knew from the accent, but I just wanted to make sure. No, thank you, my brother. No, of course, the APRM, when it comes to the reviews, it's the core mandate of the Secretariat. But with the support of the expanded mandate and the capacity building programs, we have been actually conducting so many continental initiatives to implement the reviews. I will give an example. In South Africa, we work very closely with the DPSA on strengthening the issues of civil service and professionalism of civil service. Recently, we also supported the Pan-African Parliament and the Ministry of, you have the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, the DPME. We supported them to validate the second voluntary national review on SDGs. And we have been actually trying to present the South African model with all its success and the challenges to other African countries to learn from. At national level, I would say that we conducted the second generation review of South Africa in 2021. It was a tough time in COVID, and President Ramaphosa launched this review last year, end of 2023 actually, and it was the 20th anniversary of APRM. And I'm glad to say that one of the quick fruits outcome of that we are promoting now SDG localization program with the United Nations, which South Africa is one of the beneficiary countries, in order to develop at least one national owned capacity building program on the subsidiarity and how the grassroots and multi-level governance can be pursued. So you may not necessarily see the quick outcome of the review immediately, but you can see it in the midterm to the long term through different policies, through different initiatives, and impactful initiatives for the benefit of the citizens. The third intervention also we do with South Africa now is to make sure that the review findings are incorporated in the 2020-2030 framework of the United Nations intervention in South Africa. So you will see that the huge pillar of this, the second pillar of intervention, focuses on good governance, rule of law, and enhancing the security capacities of the South African authorities. So this is all in a nutshell what I can say about how we support and support back the country to implement the reviews and our continental initiatives. I hope this was clear. Thank you, Charlie. I see Obaking, Pitswani, Cliff, if we don't have any.
Yes, Obaking. Kindly go ahead, Obaking. You have the floor.
And please
thanks very much, Cliff.
Introduce
And
yourself and country.
to yourself. Thank you very much, Sarah, for this really brilliant presentation. I'm from the DPSA in South Africa, so obviously I'm fairly familiar with this part of the presentation. But I really just wanted to ask, and it's something that I think has been on my mind, and I think many other colleagues that I've been engaging with, especially when you talk about the component or the consideration that APRM is a voluntary. It's based on voluntary participation, and I think in the main political will as well, right? How does the APRM incentivize states, others that have not exceeded or have not become part of the process, not only to participate, but I think also those that are part of the APRM? How do you incentivize them to implement the identified country review report challenges, right? So the challenges that you have in the report, how do you then incentivize that they actually consider implementing? And also, what kind of mechanisms would you have in place to address the lack of political will in some instances? I mean, it's not necessarily something that cuts across the board, but I think in some instances, especially with countries that have not adopted the tools, how do you then incentivize their politicians to start, I suppose, supporting the tools and supporting the work that you do in their own countries as well? Thanks.
Thank you, Opakeng. I'm not sure if we have any other raised hands, so I can take two more questions or one, or even comment on the toolkit. Okay. Let me, Cliff, shall I proceed?
Yes, you can proceed. Thank you.
No, just thank you very much, my sister. Very two relevant questions. The first one about the dormant countries of APRM. By today, we have 45 African countries, members of the APRM Secretariat, member of the APRM, at least overall body. As you know, APRM, we are based here, Continental Secretariat, but we also have national structures through the National Secretariat and the National Governance Council. The National Governance Council is actually the most powerful, rhetorically speaking, institutional and coordination mechanism linking between the APRM and African Union, and also the government in all African member states. The challenge with the dormant countries that you will see that most of them are in a conflict or post-conflict countries. And we used to have countries like Chad, for instance, which was very active in APRM. But because also we as African Union in general, I would say, maybe unpopular opinion, that we are not very much intervening at national level because of the legal competences of the union. So we cannot all the time respond effectively and quickly when a political transformation is happening. And after the political situation in Chad in the past 5 years, our intervention start to be less and less. And even when we try to engage them for security reasons and sometimes for travel challenges, they don't attend all the capacity building or the initiatives we have. So this is when it comes to the dormant, the state of dormant countries. But I think now we achieved a lot with the former leadership of Professor Eddie Maloka to engage more than 20 countries. I think when he joined the Secretariat, APRM only has 15 or 17 countries. He left when we have 44 member states involved in the APRM Secretariat and the APRM work as full members. And now what is missing is only few countries across the continent. I know that there are discussions with Libya now and Sahrawi state. These are two countries now we are pushing very hard. Some countries also have political sanctions by the union, like Burkina Faso, and we have to respect the decision of the union up till the sanctions are lifted up. But I agree with you that we need to also do more in that, and we need to reach out more countries. But the second question about the political will, it's a bit of a difficult question. You know why? Because even when the country is a member, sometimes it can remain inactive. The incentive we provide is always the political credibility and the commitment and adherence to the African Union rules and codes and standards, because APRM is all about, it's the baby of the African Union to ensure that countries are implementing and adhering to the Union laws. The Africa Governance Report itself is a decision by heads of state that the APRM has to track the progress of governance issues every 2 years. And in 2023, we addressed the unconstitutional change of government, where some of these inactive countries actually participated. In 2025, the AGR focuses on the mineral resources and natural resources management in the continent, because it was actually a recommendation of the 2023 report that people in the continent are actually in favor of the military rule at some point sometimes, because democracies are failing them to give them the social justice they are calling for, or to give them equal opportunities to access to jobs, or to provide them with social safety net programs, etc., etc. So I think the mechanism to achieve this political will is definitely through the APRM national structures, but also with the support of the African Commission, AUDA, NEPAD, and many other agencies. And still, if you don't have the political will in place, all these efforts might be gone in vain if you don't have strong ministers, leaders who believe in the role of the African Union and the role of the Continental Secretariat in changing the African reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we have closed anyone out with any comments. Okay. Now I'd like to invite my colleague Eric to take us through the poll.
Sorry,
Eric?
before you move
Okay.
on, I just have
Okay.
one last comment, and I do apologize because I think it's an important question that I omitted. The role of young people, Sarah, in these processes. I would imagine that the national governing councils would have youth representation, but
Yes, we have.
outside of that, do you think that the youth is meaningfully engaged in these processes? And I think from your own observation as having been part of this process for quite some time, have you found that young people are meaningfully engaging and are also trying to hold governments to account, and I think also providing some level of input into these processes? Thanks.
No, I mean, I fully agree with you. And your country now with the host of the G20 and all these events, honestly and frankly, youth are definitely involved, and they are heavily involved, and not just in the APRM work or the review. In the NGC, Botswana, we have representative of youth. But the question is always how far the country is counting on them to implement the review recommendations. In most and almost, it's a cross-cutting in all our reviews that we encourage governments to engage youth, because nothing for us without us, as we have this slogan. But EPRM also has very good initiatives where youth are mainstreamed in all our work now. Recently, I coordinated, and Cliff was there. We had the South-South Cooperation Forum in Freetown in Sierra Leone. This was the 3rd edition of the forum. I think DPSA was there, a representative for the minister. The international cooperation team attended, and we had a special exhibition for Agenda 2063 youth initiatives coming all the way from the continent. It was so good, and I was very happy to see that we are able as EPRM to offer them a slot to speak. And we even have sessions on the role of youth in promoting the Global South solidarity, the Africans in diaspora, and we brought youth from all over the world, even from China and from Washington, D.C., to speak about how African youth are meaningful. And they are meaningful for sure. It's just more about how their countries are leveraging on them. We see in some countries they are appointing them as parliamentarians, appointing them as deputy ministers. But what matters more are also supporting them to start their businesses, because we have large and huge civil service sectors in most African continent, and we are a very growing and youthful continent, and they cannot absorb all of us in the public sector. So we need also to think about out of the box how the private sector should support youth in this trajectory, and how we as EPRM, we also anticipate to have the youth symposium in the last quarter of the year. It's another big flagship program where we offer youth a space to link with their parliamentarians, with their politicians, to also voice out their needs, and mostly important, highlight what they can do for their countries. So this is my answer in a very brief way. And I look forward to maybe talking to you bilaterally on this later on. Thank you, Baki.
Thank you. I see Mr. Sadiki. Yes, Mr. Sadiki has a question or a comment. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Zara for the wonderful presentation. My question is about the independence of the planning agencies. If I remember, she was talking about, the independence of the agency, the planning agencies. So I want to understand what independence was he talking about. If it is political, we know that planning, national strategic planning is envisioned by the national leaders, which the national agencies comes is part of the institutions governed by the national leaders. So I understand that it is the vision of the national leaders that is translated into planning, and that planning be implemented in the country. So maybe you can elaborate more deeply on what independence talking about. Thank you.
Sadiq, you're from which country, if I may ask?
Somalia. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Welcome, Somalia. Ahlan wa sahlan. I assume you speak some Arabic?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sadiq. Well, I would disagree with you a little bit on how independence of national planning authority is understood. In all the work that I think in the last 2 decades, the United Nations, the African Union, all the literature on national planning or the citizens' concern, actually the process should go vice versa. We have to have a bottom-up approach of national planning in addition to or to complement what the president or what the leadership is seeing. I'll give an example of Uganda. Uganda is a very good example because, and even Kenya, because they have the county system or they have the district planning system. Maybe Somalia is a smaller country, so you see like Djibouti or Mauritius or Seychelles, you don't have the luxury to be segregated or decentralized. But if you look at the big countries, especially when they have massive number of governorates or counties or provinces, the process should go the opposite. The independence meaning that even if the political vision articulates certain priorities, the National Planning Commission or the Ministry of National Planning has to have a voice on visioning and investigating how the country is implementing national development priorities. For instance, in South Africa, the priorities in Cape Town are different from the priorities in Johannesburg. Why? Because they both have different national planning management, I would say, authorities. However, there is also at the overall country level, the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, which also set the overall vision of the country. But the priorities at subnational level can be different according to the needs of the citizens, safety and security, education, creating jobs. Other cities would prioritize, for instance, roads and infrastructure. So that's why we are talking about the independence. Independence meaning and the autonomy that they have on daily basis, the capacity to go back to the government and the parliament and say, this is where we are. Executives by nature have to be accountable to the legislative branch. That's why the government goes to the parliament to present the vision, to present the budget, to request resources approval. But also you need to give them the adequate technical findings of what the society needs beyond the political vision. That's what we are talking about independence. At the high-level political forum, you will see that the Minister of Planning, Minister of State of Planning of Uganda, leading the delegation. But the actual person who will speak about the technical element of national planning is the chairperson of the National Planning Authority. Why? Because also Uganda is a big country, has different provinces. They have been working on the SDG localization at different levels. And the city of Kampala needs may differ from other cities. And that's why national planning has to be agile, flexible, and responsive to the citizen needs, not only based on what the national leadership is seeing. And that's why most of them now are trying to combine between the difficult task of delivering on infrastructure projects, delivering on electricity projects, but also backing up with social safety net packages with educational support programs, human capital investment, in order to make sure that the institutions are ready to implement and also citizens are feeling the benefit of this national planning. I hope my response was clear.
There's another question at the, oh, sorry. Can you go ahead, please?
Can I follow up, because I haven't got the place to, and so I get permission from you to follow up with Sadiq's question.
Sorry, who's talking now? Mr. Kamal Gotali? Is it
Yes,
you?
my name
Not
is Kamal.
Sadiq. Can you please
Not
introduce
Sadiq.
yourself and your country so we know where you're from?
Since he's my colleague, let me follow up with him.
Hello,
Hi.
Kamal.
Yes. أهلا وسهلا.
أهلا بيك. Now you know where I come from, right? It's very easy for you to know.
I assume Tunisia.
Much closer. We're much closer. I'm from Egypt. Go ahead.
I mean, let me chime in. You know, in our case, we don't have a national planning, independent national planning commission. I think we had in the 70s, around 1977, which when we have established a dedicated ministry for planning. But you know, Somalia became a fully fledged federal system, and now what we call a federal member states, almost like a province. But they have, you know, our federal system is so deep, so they have their constitution, they have their parliaments, and they have their cabinet, and every federal regional state its own ministry of planning. So we have ministry of planning at the federal level, and we have ministries of planning at the state level, and they work together, what we call the National Development Council, which we do in every quarter. And in the recent, you know, Somalia had around 10 national development planning, and this year, I mean, last year, actually, we have done our national transformation planning. So national transformation planning was really different from the last 10 national development plans, because for the first time we have come up with kind of some sort of, we can say, foresighting, but it's not foresighting as a foresight. We have what we call Centennial Vision 2060, which is around almost very close to Africa 2063 vision. And Somalia's vision of 2060 is kind of 100 years of our independence in 1960. So we have a plan for almost for the next 35 years. Not a plan, is a vision. And we said, let us rename from NDB to NTB, since we want our transformation plan to be different. Oh, okay. What's the difference between our NDBs and the NTBs? Last time our NDBs, it was kind of a donor-driven, very close to SDGs, and the national ownership was very low. So this time around, we have said, okay, let us own it, and we have hired kind of a consultancy company that actually facilitated with us. We have brought people from every state. We have, I mean, the participatory process was very high, including the donor community, including international partners, the UN system, and everyone. And so the planning was actually political free. I don't think we had some sort of, instead, even though we have a ministry that who is part from the executive, but actually everyone was represented, including those who are from the federal member states, districts, regions, everyone. And actually, we have come up with a very good document that actually our private sector also, have contributed. That's the 5 years plan from 2025 to 2029. My question here, that's from there. My question here is, when we say in National Planning Authority or National Planning Commission, do we mean that because we have here Ethiopia, they have National Planning Commission, they don't have National Ministry of Planning. So we have this problem of roles mandates, competing mandates. We have Minister of Finance who does only finance, but also who controls the economic projects that actually linked with the World Bank. And we have a Minister of Planning who's in charge for the NTB, and we have also the Prime Minister Office who's also coordinating the work and going on the performance of the economy, the performance of the ministries, and all these things. So I just wanted you to summarize for me how different, maybe in the case of Egypt, I traveled very easy. We have a very active Minister Rania, who's very different from the from the Ministry of Finance, and also I've met with the National Planning Institute in Egypt. They have kind of act as a planning commission. So I've met with them, but just we have a Ministry of Planning who doesn't have a planning commission, but just to have a statistics agency. But the plan kind of a department under the Ministry of Planning. Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you so much, Kamal. And you know what? I honestly believe that there is no one size-fits-all approach for national planning. Every model has to be agile to the country needs and country priority. There is no harm at all, especially in your case, as you explained to me. You have at the government level, you have your overall ministry dedicated to planning, right? And you have another ministry for finance. In the case of Egypt, I used to be in the government, but this was a few years ago. I remember very well that the Ministry of Planning, it always has to have a very good collaborative spirit with the Ministry of Finance. That's number one. Why? Because your finance arm or the financing arm or the budgeting arm is coming from the Ministry of Finance, as you said. And they work with the World Bank, but the work they do with the World Bank should not conflict or duplicate with the priorities of the country from the national planning perspective. And the question is, what are the mandates of each of these ministries? Because my understanding, the Ministry of Finance can be implementing a project with the World Bank to do macroeconomic reforms or a certain capacity building. Having said that, if the World Bank is sponsoring an electricity planet or a project in your country, then it has to go through the Ministry of Planning. So did you get the difference? But the starting point that they used to have a very, very good and very strong collaboration. You give the example of Egypt. Yes, I think they are very lucky now that the two ministers are in a very, very good harmony, making sure that the National Development Plan of Egypt, at least on the short term, because you said that you have a long visionary 2060. Now you need to cascade this into at least 5-year plan or 10-year plan to make sure that you are also adapting with the global and continental challenges and the needs of the Somali people. And the Ministry of Finance should be your backup financial arm on this exercise. Now, unfortunately, in most of the African countries, the challenge is always conflicting mandates, working in silos, overfight on resources instead of supporting each other when it comes to how the Ministry of Finance should support Ministry of Planning. And that's why in Egypt now, the Ministry of International Cooperation becomes a part of the Ministry of Planning for a simple reason, that all the loans and grants which are coming to the country should be simply aligned with the National Development Planning priorities. Another initiative also that the Ministry of Finance, and you can lead this with the Ministry of Finance, is what we call it the participatory budgeting, where you are engaging citizens at the multi-level, as you said, and not on the federal system, but also at the sub level of provinces in Somalia to give reflection on their needs. And then the budget should be aligned with the NDP priority, the National Development Plan priority, and citizens' priority. That's how you also bring the Ministry of Finance to be accountable. But definitely there is a need for always a mechanism, a coordination mechanism that you can lead yourself in your ministry to coordinate the effort of all involved ministries, including Ministry of Finance, to help you to implement your short to midterm NDP, and how we are investigating even the loans coming to the country, the grants coming through different partners to be able to support you adequately. I think coordination mechanism is very important. Unfortunately, Somalia, I think they are part of APM. We have a colleague from Somalia in the Secretariat. But I don't think we have done so much with Somalia. And I remember when we reviewed the progress of the VNR, I think 2 years ago, there is still a long way to be done. So we'd be very glad to see how we can support you if needed on all these issues of national planning. And we can also do peer learning with few other African countries, including Uganda. Ethiopia also, we work with them very well. And they are brothers and sisters. We have been supporting them in some capacity building, especially in the capital of Addis Ababa. However, you have the freedom to choose also which country model that you can learn from, and then you can try to not replicate, but at least develop a coordination mechanism to assist you to deliver on your mandate. And having national commission, it's good to be able to dig deeper, but again, based on the country resources and capacities, if your ministry is able to deliver on the same mandate, then there is no need to duplicate more institutions or more architectures. Thank you, Kamal. Thank you. Back to you, Cliff.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I see we have a number of questions that have been put in the chat box. Mr. Emmanuel Ishika says, thank you for sharing the strategic foresight. His question is, since we are observing failure in democracy in most African states, do you think that it's high time for African states to come up with their own type of democracy? And again, there's a question from Motlokwa. He says, or she says, pardon me, as you have indicated, some countries have NDPs. Have you tracked how countries are doing with actual implementation of these plans? Because it is one thing to plan and another to implement.
Both are very good questions. Thank you. I would say when it comes to the first question on the issue of democracy and where we are, I just recall that last month, I think in June, not even last month, in early June, we had the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, the Mo Ibrahim Week in Marrakesh. And I will answer by simply repeating what Professor Lopez, he's a very prominent professor at University of Cape Town here in South Africa, says that most of the time in the continent, we tend to replicate the Western model of democracy. And we should now, instead of democratize Africa, we would rather Africanize our democracy model. Because for many years, I think for the last 5 to 6 decades, we have been just trying to listen to what the West is telling us about standing in queues, giving the vote, and our citizens ended up being frustrated when their services are not met and when their expectations are not met by the leaders. So we need to think about the role of traditional leaders in our communities. We need to think about how our youth, as my sister from South Africa, can play a role in this democratic transformation. And we need to go beyond definitely the just pure model of elections and electoral college, because I don't believe, and I'm a political science student, I don't believe that this is the right model for the continent. When you stand in queues and decide that you need to have at least a minimum bar of voters to give the vote in each country or each city, it's not reflecting what the citizens are need for many, many reasons. And that's why most of the youth now are boycotting elections, because they don't feel that there is a hope in this model of democracy. We need to think of our, I think we should rather think about our economies, our economic growth, our citizen priorities, and then we can talk about the right to vote, because you can never vote, you can never ask a hungry man to go and give his vote. That's also what I think, that we need to address our economic challenges, our independence and reliance on foreign aid, our youth rights, and then we see which kind of model of democracy can be applied. But I believe also that the African Union have been working over the past 10 years on a lot of work for that, especially the Africa Governance Charter on Democracy and Rule of Law. Unfortunately, it's not yet enforced by all member states, but this is also another good example of how countries and citizens can be adhering to the Union values and norms, which also aim to respect the sovereignty of member states and their integral independence. Thank you. I think the second question was on the NDP. As I said, very valid question. Have we tracked if they are doing the actual implementation or not? Well, there are many ways, Mutoloka, to follow up on that. There is a way, because they work with the UNDP at national level, they also report on the SDGs, which most NDPs now are aligned with. And by the way, we did a quick exercise last year. I think more than 49 African countries have national development plans, but the track of the overall implementation is very challenging because of the lack of data. The countries may not give you all the data you need, but what we know that they have NDPs, that they're implementing some of the NDPs through indicators. And of course, good governance in that aspect is the lowest in progress in most African countries. But to have the full picture on if they're doing actual implementation, that's why I was saying that the role of the parliament and the AAPAM national structures and the work we do on the actual planning is extremely important. But this is also a provocative question that we can look at in our research with member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I see, Mr. Sadiq, is your hand still up, or that was before?
Yeah, I have another question.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Zara, for your feedback. Just, I was asking myself about planning and foresight strategic planning. It has a link with democratic governance and legitimacy of the government. When you talk about when government is coming into place, they have a manifesto and priority that they want to deliver. They promise to the citizens. The essential needs for the inclusivity of the strategic foresight at the local level and the demand, how do you balance with the priorities of the leaders who are coming into the power? So how do you balance those demands while the leaders, when they're coming into the government, they have manifestos and policy that they have promised to the citizens, and that's why they have elected? And how do you balance them and make sure that they meet the citizen need? And when you're making the planning, the strategic planning, how do you balance those two factors?
Thank you, Sadiq. Again, as I said, then the national leadership, of course, has a very influential role to play on national planning, but that's why also technocratic governments are very important. So when the president comes with a vision that we need to get this done and we need to get that done, you should also have and encourage the multi-stakeholder dialogue with the political parties, with the CSOs, with the youth, to show and to present your policy proposal, if I can say it correctly, as collective action, not just as it's the Ministry of Planning vision that we have to do that. It's based on interaction with citizens at provinces and at even federal level, that this is how we see the country trajectory is going. And that's why we are presenting to the political leadership that these are the priorities. I would say that sometimes lobbying also is very important in this exercise, private sector role, civil society, because the leadership will not follow its own voice. The leadership is building its own decision and vision based on policy incentives. And I think here the powerful, the National Planning Commission or Ministry is to interact with citizens, to interact with civil society, to interact with private sector, and have a collective action on the key priorities of national development planning, the much easier it will be the role of the National Planning Authority or Ministry to brief the president on these priorities. So you need to make sure that you have at the political level also very strong coordination mechanism or steering committee where you have all the national parties on the table discussing the priorities, aligning the priorities, finding resources, seeing how private sector can support, and then present something comprehensive to influence the decision making, because it's all about this, what I'm saying, it's bottom-up approach. And I don't think, as you said, the president is coming or the political leadership is coming to change certain reality. So there is no harm that we, of course, follow I don't want to see it like I'm saying utopic argument, but at least there is no harm if the presidency or the political leadership has a vision and then you somehow try to influence, somehow try to persuade the leadership to listen to some ideas and recommendations. I hope this helps.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I will also give an example. I'm sorry, Cliff, I know that we need to wrap up the session. I will give an example from Egypt and South Africa. Both countries, I was lucky to live there, here and there, of course, but I remember that 10 years ago, it was very difficult in Egypt to assess poverty. It was seen as a very political sensitive issue. When I was in the Egyptian government in 2007, 2008, I saw that I was still fresh grad, and 2009. And then we never ever assessed the issue of poverty, how it affects the Egyptian society. After many political consideration and the revolutions that we went through, the first minister ever who raised the issue of the multidimensional poverty challenges in the country was only happening, I think, 7 or 6 years ago, through Dr. Hala Said. And I think she's a good friend of AAPAM family. And Dr. Hala, because she's a professor of economics, when she becomes a minister of planning, she insisted to encapsulate the issue of multidimensional poverty to show the government and the decision makers, including President al-Sisi, how poverty looks like in Egypt. The poverty level used to be 35% of the overall economic growth we have, or that we have 35% of the society living under poverty line. She introduced the multi-level poverty, and she insisted that if she's going to do a new census, this must be reflected, and it shows that actually the numbers are much higher than what we used to hear for almost 20 years. And she explained and she defended this in front of the president to say, I could have given you a very nice picture of how poverty looks like in your country, but it wouldn't be an honest assessment of how poverty is cascaded, because in the multidimensional poverty, as some of you are aware, they are assessing the GDP and the economic growth and poverty from different angles, not just based on what you receive every day per annually, but also they assess your access to health, education, and shelter. And this is how they are assessing poverty from a more human right perspective. South Africa also has been doing this, and unfortunately, the results shows that fighting poverty in South Africa is very, very slow. However, it gives an honest assessment of where you are, and you cannot falsify the results because it's a very, very broad exercise and very complicated, and it's actually done with the support of the Oxford Human Development Initiative at Oxford University. So these are just an example of policy influence that both countries succeeded in implementing in the past 5 or 10 years. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, so much. I really appreciate.
Sorry,
Okay.
Just an observation or remark for Mrs. Sarah. I'm Fatma from Tunisia. Thank you for your insightful presentation. And I'm wondering why Tunisia is not among the participants in AAPRM and in the workshop held in Addis. And can you follow up with this issue for Tunisia to participate?
You're from which directorate or ministry? Are you from the government?
From the Ministry of Education, and I'm working for the governance cell to the National Training and Upgrading Skills Center.
No, Aishik, Fatma, thank you very much. Lovely to hear from you. We would love, definitely. I'm very much keen to engage all African member states. The workshop I was referring to, my sister, was held last year in Cape Town, and I remember that it was heavily UN funded workshop, not through AAPRM. We have certain components, but unfortunately Tunisia hasn't been very active in our processes, and I'm working on that with the new CEO. As I said, Ambassador Marie Muscat, we work to bring some North African countries closer. Algeria now is the chair of the APRM up till end of this year. Then we will be having Uganda, but we are working with Libya, Tunisia, trying to also find momentum for their engagement. But I used to work very closely with the Ministry of Investment. That's also, you see, again, the issue of mandates. We work with Ministry of Investment because I assume that they also have an angle of planning. That's why they used to be, when we send them invitations, I think they always, our missions in Addis, or even your mission in Addis, they communicate with the ministries of investment. Last month, I saw your colleagues from the, I think the Directorate of Civil Service, like Ministry of Civil Service, الإدارة العامة, Public Administration. So we
الإدارة
used to
العامة
have to,
للوظيفة العمومية.
exactly.
الإدارة العامة للوظيفة العمومية.
Yeah, so it depends
Yes.
actually on the type
I
of the
get it.
meeting. Yeah, but unfortunately, Tunisia for this workshop in particular was not there. But it doesn't mean that we are excluding.
Yes.
We are very happy. And I think what we're gonna do with Cliff later on, we're gonna collect the list of participants in this program. We will add it to our list of stakeholders, and we'll keep you posted on future events if we would love to have your voice or to share the experience of Tunisia, or even how we can capacitate Tunisia on these issues. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Madam Sarah.
Thank you. I really want to appreciate each and every one of you. It has been really, really interactive from your comments and even inputs, and we sincerely thank you for that. Allow me now to invite my colleague Eric, who will take us briefly through the poll. Remember the poll that we had. We just want to see the result on how you voted, after which we will be closing shortly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clifford. Thank you also, Sarah, for that very wonderful presentation and also inputs to the questions given. Thank you to also the participants for that wonderful insights and also questions. Back to our poll on the future-ready governance, that is forecasting as a public sector strategy for sustainable development. The poll was meant to help us understand how familiar we are with the concept of strategic foresight and forecasting. Those are the barriers we see in the application, the areas where it could have the greatest impact, which we have also had concerning the questions. So allow me to just go to the very first question. The first question was, how familiar are you with the concept of strategic foresight, forecasting in governance? And we see a good number responded somewhat familiar, that had 55%, moving to number 2, that heard of it but are not sure what it entails. We had number 3, being led by the not familiar at all. And the very last one was that was number very familiar. That was number 3, not 2. And then the very last one was not familiar at all, on a 10%. And therefore, the very first question was having the concept of strategic foresight and forecasting, where we have also seen also in the presentations we have been having, and also the inputs our presenter have been suggesting. Number 2 was in your view, what is the biggest barrier to applying forecasting in public sector decision making? And also we had a very good response, being we had a tie between lack of political will, stock leadership support, tying with insufficient data and evidence. Then we are followed by limited technical skills in the area of reacting to the biggest barriers when applying forecasting in public sector decision making. Thirdly was there is a short-term policy focus in reacting to these barriers. Remember, it is about public policies, the policies we are putting in place, how sufficient they are when implemented to ensure that they are reacting and giving a good output regarding the barriers that are at hand. Our next stage was that resource constraint. where a good number also reacted because it is a matter of how we allocate resources to the barriers we do have, the matter on how we strategize and also prioritize the areas that we need to allocate resources and ensure the availability of needed resources. We move to number 3. Number 3 was which area of governance will benefit most from future forecasting strategies, and we are looking at 5 good areas. That is a public service delivery, economic planning, climate change, security, and technology. And if also we do check, these are the very high areas that especially they are being looked upon at such a time. But in our poll, the leading was public service delivery, that is in health, education, which we cater them as very strategic areas, especially in our states and institutions where we work. And that was leading, followed by the economic planning and growth. And on this particular issue was about how our economy can be planned and also achieve the greatest impact in our areas of study and in our areas of work. And therefore, that was the second. Thirdly was security and crisis preparedness. Remember, in this area, we do face crises, we do face insufficiencies, we do face maybe emergencies, and therefore it requires on how we do come up and also react to the emerging emergencies and how we are well prepared to ensure we have a good input on reacting to the emerging crisis. And we had technology and digital transformation. As we all know that we are in the area of technology and digital transformation, where social media platforms are being at hand and being used in this area. And therefore, as we also focus in the future-ready governance and forecasting as a strategy, technology and digital transformations cannot be altered, but a good impact. And then lastly, we had climate change and environmental management, though we didn't have any response to that regarding on this area. Number 4 poll was how ready do you think your institution or government is to adopt forecasting tools for sustainable development planning? We had choices there. That is fully ready, somewhat ready, not ready yet, but open to it, not ready at all. And we saw a good number reacted that somewhat they are ready to adapt these tools, to adapt these sustainable development regarding on the presentations they have received and also inputs they have gathered from this segment. That was followed by not ready yet, but open to it. Some are saying they are not ready, but they are looking forward to open to it and also implement these areas in this matter of forecasting and foresighting. That was followed by our next, that is fully ready. A good number, they are promising that they are ready to implement and forecast the tools for sustainable development and planning. Lastly was not ready at all, which we also had no response, and therefore we believe that all of you are ready, and some are somewhat ready and some are about to open onto it. Our last question or poll was what kind of support would most help governments adopt forecasting as a strategy? We had responses. Number 1 was training and capacity building, followed by access to forecasting tools and data systems. 3, partnership with research, academic institutions, stronger political and leadership commitment, and then funding and resources. And a good number suggested training and capacity building, as we also know that these Strong Nations for Africa program, its main agenda is for training and capacity building to public service servants to ensure that they do understand and steward their institutions and states to coming up clearly to be strong in this upcoming environment. Number 2 was followed by We had a tie between access to forecasting tools and data system, as we have all know that we are ready to implement these tools and come up with the idea and agenda to ensure they are well implemented. That was tying with a stronger political and leadership commitment, as old as politics is, and therefore our institutions, our states do face in areas where politics is well initiated, and therefore depending on the political and the leadership we have, it is a commitment unto all of us to ensure that we have a stronger political area and a stronger leadership to ensure that it involves all stakeholders and all public to ensure that resources are well implemented and also the political will is well initiated. The fourth one was funding. The fourth one was partnership with research and academic institutions, how well we do partner with other institutions, other organizations to ensure that we are placing this urge to ensure that forecasting as a strategy in leadership is well implemented. And therefore, it all calls upon us to ensure that we have good partnership, to ensure that everything that when organizations come together, they harness and bring that synergy to collaborate with each other to ensure that we have a good response and also have good capacity building and training upon different organizations to ensure wholesome support between each other. And lastly was funding and resources. As we have all known that it also calls for upon funding, it also calls upon resources to ensure that we do have all these to ensure that all the implementations are well done and are accommodated to all areas to ensure that we do come up with this forecasting and foresighting strategy well implemented in our institutions and states. And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for having and giving good responses to ensure that we do have good feedback even to these sessions. At this juncture, allow me to welcome Julie Muya, our Senior Programs Officer, to give her closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much, Clifford. Distinguished participants, our partners from the Chandler Institute of Governance and the African Peer Review Mechanism, colleagues from the AAPAM Secretariat, on behalf of the AAPAM fraternity, I convey greetings. It's great to interact with you once again. As we bring this insightful webinar on future-ready governance, forecasting as a public sector strategy for sustainable development to a close, I wish to sincerely thank each of you for your active participation and engaging contribution. Today's session, for the last about 90 minutes, has reaffirmed that forecasting is not just a technical tool, but a strategic imperative for public sector. By anticipating trends, preparing for uncertainties, and aligning our policies with future possibilities, we position our institutions to deliver sustainable development that truly responds to the needs of citizens. On behalf of AAPAM and CIG, I extend our sincerest appreciation to our distinguished speaker, Ms. Sarah Hamuda, the Senior Continental Governance Officer at the African Peer Review Mechanism, who expertly expounded on the SEPA principle of sound policy making, underscoring strategic planning and foresight as a key strategy for strengthening institutional capacities through a comprehensive continental overview, and sharing her personal and relevant recommendations for national development planning, as well as something interesting I learned about Africanizing our democratic system, all potential areas for research. Esteemed participants, due to the salient nature of foresight and strategic planning, AAPAM has intentionally mainstreamed this topic in our leadership development and training program, scheduled for the 23rd to the 26th of September in Mombasa, Kenya. This program would further delve into collaborative governance, strategic foresight, and transformational leadership. Through innovative frameworks, future-oriented digital planning tools, and change management strategies, this seminar will aim to strengthen leadership competencies and empower participants to lead institutional transformation effectively, as aligned to the AAPAM Leadership Development and Training in Public Administration and Management Toolkit. I also take this opportunity to welcome you to the 44th Roundtable Conference hosted by the Kingdom of Eswatini from the 2nd to the 5th of December 2025. This conference will similarly focus on agile public administration, partnership, and digital transformation for citizen-centric service delivery. As mentioned in Arusha, I welcome you all to share your innovations for the AAPAM Innovative Management Award ceremony as we highlight homegrown solutions and opportunities. Esteemed participants, on behalf of AAPAM, I wish you all safe travels to the sunny tropical island of Singapore City in Singapore for the third segment of the Strong Nations for Africa program. Singapore is known for its thriving economy, diverse culture, efficient infrastructure, a recognized global hub for finance trade with a mix of modern skyscrapers and historical neighborhoods. I assure you all that you're in for an unforgettable learning experience. Finally, it is our sincere hope that this program marks the beginning of a continuous dialogue and collaboration as we chart pathways towards a more sustainable and prosperous, strong nation for all. Thank you, and I wish you continued success in your leadership journey. I wish you all a good day.